Hey everyone, so I'm back again with another video, and I saw this really interesting video made by a YouTuber named DistantCoder, who made a video about a player getting banned over marked cards. Be sure to check out this person's video. They made a very interesting video. The link is in the description below. I found it to be really interesting and pretty much is the inspiration for this video. So anyways, I thought it would be interesting to talk about the reasons why some players got banned over marked cards, or they do get banned over marked cards. And he goes into detail about why the player got banned. However, the point of this video is not to go into detail about the ban. The point is to discuss whether if it's fair to ban a player over yellowed cards, which are considered marked cards. Furthermore, I seek to talk about whether banning someone over an unintentionally marked card is warranted. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. So, if you're not too familiar with the situation, pro player Joshua Schmidt received a disqualification at YCS Utrecht for marked cards. The cards he were using were 2 Pot of Desires in his Shadal Invoked deck. The Pot of Desires were old secret rares, which we yellowed at the top, and you could potentially see these yellowed cards from the opponent's view. So Schmidt was promptly deck checked in round 11 for this reason, and a long story short, he was disqualified / banned for using marked cards. That was the official reason. But it's also important to note that he has been drawn into question for marked cards in the past at other events. However, the cards being yellowish are what sparked the investigation. So if you're wondering, what is considered a marked card? A card is considered to be marked if you can distinguish the card from other cards without seeing the front of said card. That's basically the gist of it. That's not the word for word description of it in the rules, but that's the general idea. And marked cards can include but are not limited to warping, creases, discoloration, card thickness or texture, and or watermarks. So sleeved cards can be distinguished in a similar way and be considered marked if they are also bearing unique patterns or even scuff marks or little dents that can be used to tell them apart as well. So marked cards are perceived to give the owner of those cards an advantage over the opponent, an unfair advantage at that, which implies cheating and warrants a disqualification for it. However, in Joshua Schmidt's case, the cards were discolored since they were yellowish at the top of the card. However, banning someone over a yellowish card is unfair because the owner couldn't distinguish from the others. You couldn't really distinguish that card from the others. And you can't really tell the card is yellowish if the card is sleeved while being face down, especially if it's pointing away from your own view and it's really facing the opponent. So the whole principle of cheating with a marked card is to tell the cards apart, in which case, in this specific scenario, you couldn't tell the difference. And it's unfair because all you need is a card to be yellowish and you could be in trouble even though you weren't getting an advantage, which defeats the purpose of cheating in this sense. I mean, the only way at that point you could tell the card was marked is once the card was flipped up and you could see the yellowish. But we'll get into more of that later. So, in other words, you could be using an old card that could have browned or yellowed at the top or around the edges because of its age, and you could potentially face a disqualification or just get in trouble in general for having this old card that you've had for the longest time. And in other words, the expectation is you can't use old cards. You would have to waste money essentially to buy a new card, which is absurd. So what I'm saying is, this pretty much makes original prints of cards impractical since they're likely going to have yellowish or like a brownish kind of discoloration to them because of their age. It doesn't really make using old cards or original prints of cards very practical in that sense if you're scrutinizing people on this level for their cards. Also, you would also have to make sure that the cards are the same color all around the edges in order not to be questioned for essentially having a marked card, if you can imagine the air quotes over marked card. So This opens up another door, which basically I'm saying it's impractical to hunt down cards that are pretty much the same color around the edges, which is pretty absurd to me. I mean, if you're really applying this level of scrutiny, you're gonna have to apply that mentality to it too when you're searching for cards. So, in conclusion, your card is technically marked, even though you're not intentionally marking the card. And not only that, you're not gaining any advantage from the card being marked in that case, where the card is sleeved and also pointing away from you and is probably face down. If anything, the opponent would be able to notice the marked cards and would be able to gain an advantage from that card, which is a handicap, if anything, to you. However, this situation is highly improbable because it's almost impossible to tell if the card is yellowed face down if you set a card face down, especially when you're trying to shuffle it in your deck. I mean, what does this person have? Bionic vision where they can see the card through the sleeve? I mean, it's not like you can even... Let's put common sense into perspective for the most part here. Can you really see the yellowed card from the sleeve in that particular instance? Probably not. It's probably the sleeve shadow casting a more yellowish brownish tint to it, if anything. So it's really hard to tell if the card's yellowed or if it's just the sleeve itself. You can only really tell once the card is face up and you really pay attention to the card itself. So this is a really ridiculous premise to which you can get someone in trouble at YCS or any event, or disqualified or banned. And I think this is really an example of an ineffective rule, because on one hand it can get legitimate offenders, but that's not what's ineffective. The ineffective part is it also gets people who aren't legitimate offenders. It gets people purely, well, not purely in this case, but it partially almost gets people on technicality too. All it's saying is, like, you have this marked card, you're going to get in trouble, whether if it's a disqualification or something less or in between. So that's primarily where it's ineffective, because it's not getting people for legitimately trying to cheat. It's solely just because the rule says so. And I would really think an effective rule would implement a person getting in trouble or potentially disqualified / banned if they're trying to cheat. And that's pretty much been my take on it. So let me know what you think about it. And I found this whole situation kind of ridiculous, because it's like you can potentially get in trouble for not intentionally marking cards or having like this weird pattern that you didn't really implement and you weren't really getting any much of an advantage for. So seeing this video, DistantCoder's video, kind of prompted me and inspired me to make this video, because I thought it was a really interesting topic to delve into and kind of explain more about, because especially not a lot of people know about it. But with that, that's pretty much the video. If you would like to support more content like this, you can do so at patreon.com. It's at the Necromancer 1040 Patreon link down below. I normally put it in the description down there. You can check it out and you can see the description and all the other neat things I post down there. So with that, thank you very much for your support. I appreciate anything you guys support me in. Thank you so much. I'll catch you in the next video. Alright, goodbye. Take care.